read some books in October, so let's talk about them. So I finished 5 books in October, and the first book I finished is Wendy Darling by A.C. Wise. I think this is like horror. It's like a Peter Pan retelling, and I gave this 3 stars. So first, let's start with what I liked about it. I really liked the writing. I thought the writing was amazing. It was atmospheric. It was creepy. And the plot is basically like Wendy, when she came back from Neverland, she couldn't let it go. Her brothers, sometime after their parents die, put her in a sanatorium because they can't deal with her anymore, and they have basically forgotten Neverland. And so she spent some time in a sanatorium, and then she's basically released into an arranged marriage. And then 11 years later, Peter Pan comes back, and Wendy's been wanting him to come back for her for years. But when he comes back, he takes her daughter. And so Wendy goes to Neverland to get her daughter back. I thought the characterization was decent. Peter Pan was really creepy, which is something I really wanted to see. You know, I thought Neverland was very richly imagined, and the plot goes back and forth between present day and London, and then the past when she was in the sanatorium, and then we have Neverland present day from her point of view, and Neverland in the past, and then we have Neverland present day from her daughter Jane's point of view. So kind of what I would call like medium points, like things that I didn't really like, but I could live with it. Overall, I thought this read a little juvenile. Like, it almost read like a middle grade book. There's actually honestly no reason why a 12-year-old couldn't read this. There's nothing inappropriate in it at all. There's nothing even really frightening in it. So it's really strange, and that made some parts of the book like a little campy. And so like when they're in Neverland and Peter wants to play like his little Neverland games, all that stuff, you know, probably would have been better in a middle grade setting. And in an adult setting, it was just kind of weird. It was just kind of throwing the tone off. And so, like, we start, you know, I thought we started pretty strong with this nice, creepy vibe. And then we get to just kind of, like, things are getting kind of silly and not in a good way. And so the bad, without giving any spoilers, was basically Wendy keeps hinting that there's something dark in Neverland that she can't quite remember. You know, she's like, there's a monster in the heart of Neverland. And so when we see what this thing is, it was really, really disappointing. Like, again, if this had been a middle grade book, I think it would have been fine, but it's not. And it just was such a letdown. Like, I'm just gonna go ahead and say, minor spoiler, that it didn't do anything. Like, you see this thing there, and Wendy is so scared of it. She's so sick, she's about to throw up. And I'm just like, what are you scared of? Like, I get maybe it looks bad or it looks scary, but it didn't really seem like it looked all that scary. I think it was mostly that, you know, she couldn't quite tell what it was or something, but it didn't do anything. And after this build up and talking about this shadow and this darkness and this monster, it was just such a letdown. And I don't know, I just ended up feeling really unsatisfied. But anyway, it, you know, satiated the craving I have for a kind of dark Peter Pan retelling. So we're happy enough about that. So yeah, moving on. The next book I read is this one. It is A Nightmare Before Christmas, written and illustrated by Tim Burton. So if you've seen the movie, then you know that it's called Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. I don't know how much he actually has to do with that movie. But anyway, the movie is based off of this poem that Tim Burton wrote many years ago. So this is the poem, and it's really, really nice. I gave this 5 stars. It was so cozy, and I just loved it so much. It's perfect read for Christmas. And it comes with this DVD, and so Tim Burton reads the story to you, and it's like an animated style I don't know what to call it. It's kind of like slightly moving pictures, and it was so great. I watched it twice, and then I read the story by itself once, and it's just so good. If you're a fan of The Nightmare Before Christmas. And there are also like these cards in the back. That's the 13 Days of Christmas set to the tune of the 12 Days of Christmas song. So that's a really nice song to sing at Halloween and at Christmas time. So our artwork looks like this. And so it's like part poetry book, part picture book, and 100% nostalgia. So I love this, and I'm going to read it again. Okay, the next book I finally finished, is The Witching Hour by Anne Rice, our 1,000-page something monster. And I read this when I was in high school. It was a 5-star read for me. I remember thinking, 17-year-old me thought, some parts of the book were boring. I still loved it. But adult Crystal thought that it was like 95% fascinating. There was just like a few parts that were still interesting, but I was like, yeah, it's a little boring. Like, you get like the entire history of the Mayfair witches from like, I don't know, 1600s to present day. Some of it is very, very detailed. I didn't think every single family member needed to be that detailed, but it was really good. Pretty much the only thing I remembered before rereading this book via audiobook, it's a 50-hour audiobook. The speed I was listening to it at put it at around 34 hours, and so I've been listening to it for a while. And I started October with like 500 something pages left. And I was like, you know what? We're done with the file on the Mayfair witches, and so the rest of the story, we're just speeding towards the end. And it was really exciting. So I thought I could probably definitely get it finished, and I did. But yeah, basically the story is just about, there are a few different points of view, and it's just all about the Mayfair witches. And we have first-person accounts from the past, and then we have third-person accounts, and we have like speculation, and it's really, really dark in places. It's really dark. It's really gross. But it's really, really interesting and intriguing and fascinating. So it's still a 5-star read for me. I thought it was really good. The narrator for this is amazing. I think her name is Kate Redding. Oh my gosh, she's amazing. And the only other narrator that I've listened to that has been that amazing is the narrator for Nosferatu and The Fireman, both by Joe Hill. And I think her name is also Kate. It's like Kate Mulgrew, I think. Mulgrew. Anyway, that narrator is also fantastic. But yeah, narration was just perfect. Very immersive. Yeah, I had a really good time listening to this. I took my time with it because I wasn't in a hurry. I definitely could have finished it sooner, but there are a couple times, just given how long it is and how detailed it is, I just needed like a couple of breaks a couple of times. But yeah, I love this. And yeah, basically all I remembered was like a few vague things in the beginning, a couple of like random points in the middle, and then like I remembered like the present day witch, Rowan. I remembered her last chapter, and I thought it was the last chapter of the book, but there's like at least 2 more chapters. It's like an epilogue, but there's like 2 more chapters. And I didn't remember anything after this grotesque scene that happens Christmas night. I could remember like Rowan and the other like main character, Michael. I couldn't remember if they lived or died, or if they both lived, or if one of them lived and one of them died. And so it was a surprise. It was really exciting. So crazy. Really dark. But like in a really good way. Like for me, because I like that. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. So I can continue on with the series. I've already started listening to book 2, which is Lasher. And I couldn't remember if I read that book or not, because the only thing I could remember was like the very beginning of chapter 2 that I thought was chapter 1. And I definitely did not read Lasher in high school because there's something really gross happens at the end of chapter 2 that I think I would have remembered if I had read it. So I definitely did not read this book, and I can also see why I gave up on it. The book is a little worn, not as worn as this one, so I probably did carry it around in my backpack for a couple weeks before I gave up on it. And even though like adult Crystal is finding Lasher fascinating and interesting, I can see why 17-year-old me thought it was boring, because it is a little boring. Not boring like in a bad way, just kind of boring like, okay, where are you going with this? Why am I in all these different people's points of view? I think I'm on chapter 4, or maybe I finished chapter 4 and I'm on chapter 5. I don't know, but there's been 4 different points of view already, and I'm just like a one point of view kind of person, like as a preference. I'll definitely read multiple point of view books, but I prefer single point of views. And so as a high schooler, I can see why Lasher was like really difficult on my attention span. So it is a little boring right now at the beginning, especially because I just finished this and I'm like a little anxious to like know what happens, and to get to the good stuff, to get to something interesting. But anyway, I'm sure it will pick up, and the narrator, same narrator, of course, is doing such a great job. But I'm not planning on finishing Lasher this month. I think I will finish it by the end of the year though. I'm really glad that I reread this book. I've been wanting to finish the series, and I figured that it was probably in my best interest to reread this book, and I didn't want to because it's so long, and look how small this font is, but it was worth it. And yeah, this was so fun. Okay, so the 4th book I finished is a poetry book, and it is this, Swallowtail by Brenna Tuthi. I give this 3 stars. It's just too metaphorical for me. I just like something that's like open and honest and like emotional, but like, you know, pretty metaphors. That's like my preference. But this is like too metaphorical. Like, what do these 2 things have to do with each other, and what are you even trying to say? So I feel like most of the poems in here, I didn't even know what she was trying to say. And like, you know, this kind of poetry is why some people don't like to read poetry. I don't enjoy reading something and I don't know what you're talking about. There were a couple of times I knew what she was talking about, but yeah, for the most part, it was just the metaphors. She went too hard with the metaphors, and it was not fun for me. But anyway, yeah, I gave this 3 stars. There's nothing else to say. Okay, so the last book I read in October is a romance book. It's my yearly romance read. I don't actually try to read a romance book every year, but I was kind of in the mood for one. So I read The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I have so many things to say. So let's start with what this book is about. I'm already going to have to cut like 5 minutes because I have a lot of thoughts about this book, and a lot of them are very jumbled, and I will try to make sure that this makes sense and not go off on a tangent, because everybody at work got an earful, and I just got really annoyed by a couple of things. And anyway, so what this book is about is a fake dating book. So Olive, our protagonist, went out on like 3 dates with this guy named Jeremy. And then they had like this group thing, and Jeremy met Olive's best friend, An. And Jeremy and An really hit it off. And so when Olive and Jeremy are like, yeah, this is not working out, Jeremy asked An out, but An turned him down because girl code or something. So Olive's like, I'm gonna lie and tell my best friend, one of her best friends, that I'm already seeing somebody else, so that she will move on with Jeremy. And so she's working one night when she told An she would be out, and then An comes into the lab. They're PhD students in the biology department. And An comes into the lab and she freaks out and she grabs the first person she sees and kisses him. And it turns out to be our love interest, Adam. And so he's like a professor and he's like hotshot, big stuff. And so everybody thinks they're dating, and it's just like really hot gossip. And so when she goes to his lab, to his personal lab, to like apologize, for like, you know, starting all these rumors and to apologize for like the 50,000th time for kissing them. You know, he doesn't really seem to care about the rumors. He thinks the whole thing is funny. And so he kind of proposes that why don't we just let people think we're dating for a while? Because she wants to fake date so that On will see that she's moved on and will go out with Jeremy. Which I think is the stupidest reason to fake date ever. Whatever. But Olive is very passive, so is Adam. Which was really annoying. And Adam wants to fake date her. One, because he obviously likes her and has a thing for her. And two, it's because he has, like, he's considered like a flight risk that they think another university is going to scoop him up and carry him away. So they have frozen a big chunk of his research funds. And so he's like, if I look like I'm in a committed relationship, maybe they'll say, well, he's obviously staying, he's in love, and they'll release his research funds, which I thought was a decent reason to want a fake date. Also, wanting to fake date somebody that you have a crush on is hilarious. And I really liked Adam. Adam's worst trait was how freaking passive he was. At one point, towards the end of the book, I'm like, please just say something. The good things about this book is that before I got mad at it, it was really hilarious. I was having a good time. I was laughing a lot. Olive is like awkward, and that's about it. Like the situations, like On keeps getting her into these situations that are like really awkward, and it was fun to read, you know, but by the halfway point, her self-esteem issues were just really starting to get on my nerves because I couldn't understand why she had such low self-esteem. And I know some people might think, well, she's a woman, all women have low self-esteem. And I'm like, I don't buy that bull crap, first of all. Second of all, why does everybody have to have low self-esteem? Okay, I give this book 4 stars. I gave it 4 stars because I did calm down about being angry about the self-esteem issues once I understood why she had low self-esteem. I had about 75 pages left, and I was like, oh God, please tell me I don't have 75 pages left in this book, because I cannot put up with Olive for 75 more pages. And I'm like, please let there be like, you know, 20 pages of like back matter and like a sample of another book, and there was. And then I saw the author's bio and her photo, and I was like, oh my gosh, the author is a nerd. And so I was like, the main character is probably also supposed to be a nerd. I am also a nerd. So then I was like, oh my gosh, I understand why this girl has low self-esteem. And so my anger went from like a 15 to like a 3. Man, I've been angry for like a solid week about all of self-esteem issues. I actually almost stand at the book twice because I just couldn't stand it anymore. So honestly, I could have given this book 5 stars had I understood sooner why Olive had low self-esteem. So the reason why I gave it 4 stars is because I honestly don't think the author did a good enough job of, one, showing like the character's like anxiety. Like she kept telling me, oh, I'm awkward, and oh, I have social anxiety. I can't talk in front of people. Like I can't give a talk. I'm so scared. But I didn't have any proof, you know, because all of those awkward situations are situations that like most people would be awkward in. It's not just people who are socially awkward and like awkward people. And so I don't think the author did a good enough job of showing that Olive is just an awkward person in general. I don't think she showed at all that Olive is nerdy. Like Olive mentioned Star Trek, or I'm not into Star Trek, but you know, a lot of nerds are into Star Trek. And she mentioned Star Trek like in the last chapter of the book. And I'm like, you literally had nothing in this entire book that is showing me that this girl is a nerd. Also, I'm like, the author did not do a good job of explaining why or showing me why Olive has low self-esteem. So she describes her as being brown, having brown hair, being kind of freckly, being kind of tall and kind of skinny. And like, that's all she says. And I'm like, how am I supposed to get that she has self-esteem issues from that? I'm like, she's in a competitive program. She's doing well. Like, why does she have self-esteem issues? But then once I understood that she was a nerd and I could relate to her on that level, then I was like, oh. And I only know that Olive is a nerd because the author is clearly a nerd, you know? And that's kind of that's not really an insult, but maybe it is. I don't know. If I'm insulting the author, I'm insulting myself, you know? But anyway, I can understand that though. When you're like nerdy and you're awkward, I understand. And I got it. And I calmed down, and then I was fine, and I enjoyed the rest of the book for the most part. Again, Adam is so passive. Like, at one point in the book, like, there were a couple points in the book I just wanted to smack him. And one of them was during the third act breakup, which is not a spoiler to the romance book. They all have a third act breakup. For third act breakups, this actually was not that annoying. The most annoying thing was that Adam was like, he's like so sensitive, and he's like, I don't want to like push myself on you, but I'm like, can you try to do something though? Can you at least tell her how you feel? Because she is so dense. Olive is so dense. And if somebody even told her at one point in the story that Adam had been crazy about her for years, and then she's just like, oh, he can't be talking about me. I'm like, there's no way you can misunderstand that conversation. And so she tried to explain it. The author tried to explain it at the end, but to me, that was just too late. It was too late to explain that. I'm like, you need to do a better job in the next book you write. She needs to do a better job of showing it early and not like leaving everything at the end, leaving all the explanations for the end, because it's just like you can get that in there. Like, you can have Olive had a conversation with herself or with a friend about how she doesn't want to admit, you know, that this guy likes her because it means this to her or whatever, you know, or she's scared or something, but she didn't do that at all. And it was really frustrating. But anyway, I gave it 4 stars. It was funny and fun and enjoyable for the most part, and I would read it again. And knowing what I know about it now, I would probably not get so mad about her self-esteem issues, but that's my opinion. I don't think the author did a good enough job of explaining it and helping me understand why this girl was so freaking neurotic. So anyway, I've been talking about that book for too long. But my favorite read of the month was obviously this one. It's the only one that got 5 stars outside The Witching Hour, and I've already read The Witching Hour. Not that it can't be my favorite read of the month because I already read it, but this was so lovely. So, yeah. Okay, so I do have a TBR for November. So let's go over that. I only put 5 books on the TBR. And I did like play my TBR game for it, but I didn't feel like filming that night. So the quote I picked for November is, "Neverland is simply a place to run away and hide," from Wendy Darling by A.C. Wise. So the first book on my TBR is Uzumaki by Junji Ito. I started reading this in October, but I'm doing some beta reading right now, and the deadline is technically Sunday, so I thought maybe I'd try prioritizing it, because I've been in that position where like you're waiting on feedback, and so, you know, I would like to meet her deadline if I can. So I didn't get any more of Uzumaki read, but I'm about 5 chapters in. Yeah, it's really creepy. So it's about like this spiral. There's like a spiral infestation in this town. So like people are like obsessed with spirals, and right now we're just going to different parts of town and like seeing how different people are affected by the spiral, and seeing how it's driving some people mad, and like how it's killing people, and some of it's really gross. Oh, this is so gross. I'm not going to show you the gross part. But anyway, look at this art. It is just fantastic. Junji Ito's art is fantastic. So yeah, I really like this so far. It's really creepy and disturbing, and I'm having a good time. And the next books, I'm just going to put a picture up because I don't feel like pulling them off the shelf. So the next book on my TBR is Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. All I know about this book is that there's like this academy, like the secluded academy, and if you go there, when you graduate, you can basically have any job in the world that you want. But to go there, you have to live there exclusively, and you can't have any contact with the outside world. I've heard a lot of interesting things about this book, and so people who really like Bunny by Mona Awad, which is one of my favorite books. Seem to really also like Catherine House, but it's one of those books like Bunny where it's like you read it and you either like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, or you're like, oh my gosh, what did I just read? Or you're like, oh my gosh, I hate that. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think I will like it. But that's all I can remember about like the plot. But that's all I need to know. So I think the prompt for Catherine House that I got in my TBR game was horror. So I just picked the book off the horror shelf. And then for my third prompt, I picked one word title. And so for that, I picked Rhapsodic by Laura Talassa. I think this is like new adult paranormal. I think there are fairies in the book, which is fine. As far as what I can remember, because I've only read a sample of the book, I think it's like about this girl. And basically, whenever you ask like the Fae King for a favor, he gives you like a bracelet, and then he will come back for the bracelet and like make you pay something for his help. But like there's this girl who has like her arm is filled with bracelets and he's never like come to collect, and then one day he shows up and he comes to collect. I don't know what it is, but I got past the first chapter or first couple chapters, and so I picked the book up and I'm gonna read it. And then the next book I think I got a priority read. So this was a book that I said I wanted to read this year. And I picked this out of the jar, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. And I've seen the BBC version quite a few times with Colin Firth. It's so lovely. It is the best. And I've read the manga classics version, but I haven't actually read the book. And this was the main reason why I didn't go ahead and pick the books out, because I actually have a few different copies of Pride and Prejudice, and I don't know which one I want to read. But yeah, you either know what Pride and Prejudice is about or you don't. So that's on the TBR. And then the last book on the TBR was, I think it was Retelling. I don't remember, and I don't have my notebook in my office with me right now where I wrote everything down. But I picked Small Favors by Erin A. Craig, but I actually still haven't read House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig, and so I just swapped it out and decided to read House of Salt and Sorrows instead. And this is a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling. If you don't know, 12 Dancing Princesses is my favorite fairy tale. My second favorite fairy tale would be Rumpelstiltskin, which is what Small Favors is a retelling of. And I know I don't have to read House of Salt and Sorrows before I read Small Favors, but I've had House of Salt and Sorrows longer, and I've been like really excited about reading it, but also kind of nervous because, again, this is my favorite fairy tale of all time. I don't know how things are approached. I know it's like horror fantasy, and I heard if you're like a lightweight when it comes to horror that it's really creepy. I'm not have a very high tolerance for spooky stuff, but I'm still really excited. So those are the books on my November TBR. I decided to just put 5 books because I know I'm probably going to spend the first week of November finishing up this beta read, and I don't know what kind of mood I'm in, and this is kind of long, and I don't know how easy Pride and Prejudice is going to be to read, but if I read all of these books and there's still time left in the month, I'll just pick something off the shelf, you know, like I don't have a poetry book, whatever. Technically last year's on my TBR, but it's not officially on my TBR because I'm not going to try to finish it in November. So anyway, so that's all for this video, and let me know what you're reading. I hope you had a good Halloween, if you do anything for Halloween. I didn't do anything. Yeah, happy November. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.